Welcome to Behind Closed Doors, Dr. Michael Sheehan. Today I want to talk to you about something very heavy, probably the heaviest thing that shrinks have to deal with, and that's the whole issue of suicide. And I want to tell you a story about a person I worked with, oh God, pushing 40 years ago, back in the beginning of my career. A spectacular human being. When she came in anxious and depressed and told me her story about how she had been abused by her mom as a kid, and her mom used to beat her with a coat hanger, and she had lots of issues. And I saw her for a session or two, and she reported to me that she had been depressed and had actually considered suicide and was having suicidal ideation. And after I saw her the second time, I was out one evening hanging out one of the local clubs, and I got a call on my phone from the emergency room. It's my client, or the doctor of my client, and I don't know how they found me to this day, but they did. And the doctor asked me, said we have your client here at the emergency room, and she's taken pills and made a suicide attempt, and uh, she's okay, but we don't know whether to pump her stomach or not. And she says that she would like you to come and see her. And my response was, no, that wouldn't be appropriate. And then they asked if what I thought about pumping her stomach, and I said, please pump her stomach. I think that would be helpful. And then they also said, well, we were going to send her home, but the only person we can send her home with is her mother. And she says, you know about her situation with her mom. And I said, yes, I'm aware of that situation, and I think it would be okay for you to send her home with her mom. Please ask her to give me a call the next day and touch base. Next day I get a call. She's angry. She says to me, I attempted suicide and was in the emergency room and you wouldn't come and see me, and you had them pump my stomach, and you sent me home with my mother. I said, yeah, but I don't really want to talk with you about this on the phone. Come on in and let's talk. Uh, she scheduled an appointment. She came in and she talked, and I explained to her that when it comes to suicide, there's certain things that are just important to know. One of which is that I can't stop you from killing yourself if you want. I also know that when people do attempt suicide, that once they've started the suicide, taken the pills, they almost always invariably change their mind and don't want to die anymore. But often the pills have already kicked in, and it's difficult to get a hold of anybody. And um, I also know that when people jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, the jumpers, by the way, is a highly successful way of actually killing yourself. But the ones that are saved, every single one of them on the way down changed their mind and fought for their life. So there is this issue of once you make the decision and actually do something, you change your mind. So all of these things her and I talked about, and we talked about how suicide was a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and that my issue was helping her have a great life and solve those problems, and that I'm not all about death. I'm all about life and living a life that you feel good about yourself and that you can be real and have love in your life. And she had a boy that she loved, and that did provide her love in her life. So we talked, and after doing 6, 8 more sessions, she was much better. And then she went on to my what I call PRN list, call me if needed, and she was doing well. Uh, and I didn't hear for her for, oh my, it was a couple of years. Except every once in a while she'd touch base, and I knew she was okay. And then a couple years later, I get a call from a frantic neighbor of hers, and she tells me that she's in her house, but she's in her closet and she's crying and she's hysterical, and there's a policeman over there that she had called that's checking on her to make sure she's okay. And she did tell me that when the policeman checked on her and actually went into her house and into her bedroom and into the closet and opened the door and asked if she was okay, she snapped at him, asking him, "What are you doing in my house?" Well, the neighbor had said that you're potentially suicidal, and he asked her, are you going to is your intention to kill yourself?" And she says, "No, my intention is not to kill myself. And what the hell are you doing in my house? Get out of my house!" And she basically threw him out of her house. And later, I learned from that same neighbor that what had happened was that she had met a man and had fallen in love, and they had started a business together, and they bought a truck together, and they were working this business together, and then this fella stole her truck from her and ran off to Las Vegas and left her, just left her. Uh, and this was a blow to her. So when she came back, I'm sorry, when I found out from the neighbor that she had told the cops she wasn't suicidal, I immediately went over to her house to see and to check on her, and again asked her to come in the next day. Uh, when she came in the next day, she again explained the story and how he'd stolen the truck and run off, and up till then things had been going really well, and she thought that he might be the love of her life, but it turned out to not work out. And we talked, and we talked about the cop coming into the house and coming into her closet, and that she had told him that no, she wasn't suicidal, and she told me at that point that no, it really never crossed her mind to kill herself, commit suicide. And as the session went on, I realized that she was well, she was better. She'd had a trauma, she'd had a terrible experience, but uh, I said to her, you know, you came to me because you were depressed and suicidal. You're no longer suicidal and you're no longer depressed. You've been hurt and you've been wounded by a situation, and you need to take care of that situation, get your truck back, do what you got to do about that dude, but you don't need me anymore. You're well. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. And she said to me, "You know, you're right. I think you're right. I am. I don't need you anymore. The thought of killing myself never crossed my mind." Uh, and from that point on, she did well. Later on, she came back to me and brought her boy in to me to help repair some relationship issues with him, and she went on to do really well. And I was proud of her and stayed in contact with her for years, and she continued to do well. And that story, the story I've just told you, uh, that's a story that every time I dealt with suicide, I would tell them the story about this particular client, as she had given me permission to do so. And that just telling that story kind of set people up to know what I was all about and how I handled it, and that I don't really play suicide. You know, if you really want to kill yourself, I can't stop you. I can't give you permission, and I can't stop you. So you just got to do what you got to do. Now, obviously, if a person is psychotic and thinking about killing themselves, you have to institutionalize them, and there's other situations. But generally speaking, uh, that's been my position on suicide. And I do, by the way, believe that at the end of life, there is a time for suicide when life is so terrible that and you're terminally ill, and you're not going to get better, and things are just getting worse, and you're a burden, and I think there is a time for it. So I'm not totally anti-suicide. I'm just anti um, shortening your life. You were here to we're here to this special gift of life, and I encourage people to embrace it and to not resist the realities of life, and learn how to live a life filled with love and happiness and joy. That's what I'm all about. Bottom line, permanent solution to a temporary problem. Better to solve the problem, get on with a joyful life. Thanks.